to the world's greatest Bronze Age Spider-Man podcast. Here comes the Spider-Cast. I'm your host, Mike Ellis, always joined by
Joshua Marvell, and today we're going to be taking a look at Spidey comics from April of 1988.
That's right, and we're joined by G.I. Jolie.
Woo. I'm here. Get used to it.
But guess what? We're not joined by Bex Luthor. For the first time in a while, she's missing an episode. We missed Becca already, but she'll be back next week.
I immediately was like, oh, Becca's not here? Okay. I'll see you guys next week.
Immediately checked out.
Who's going to do amazing with such disdain?
Yeah. And she's also missing a fill-in. Web.
Yeah.
Oh, darn.
Speaking of, we're going to be starting off with Web of Spider-Man number 37. When Strikes the Slasher. This is an interesting one. It definitely is a fill-in. We kind of get a little bit of some side characters, a little bit of story with MJ. So let's just jump into it and start talking about what's going on. So right from the start, we are introduced to a few new characters. At least they're new to me. I don't recognize them. Yeah. But we see Dakota North talking to a police sergeant at the scene of a crime. There's been another murder, presumably done by a serial killer known as the Slasher, who is going around killing supermodels. Dakota North is kind of like an investigative journalist. I don't think she's really a cop, maybe like a PI type person. I'm not really sure, but she kind of has
I think she's a PI.
Yeah. So she kind of has her own like agenda going on here. She's trying to figure out what's going on with the Slasher. So she's been showing up to different crime scenes to try and figure out what's going on. She's working with her brother, Ricky, who is like her younger brother, kind of like, you know, a rascally little sidekick, got a cool car, cool with the ladies. So we kind of get like a little bit of an introduction with them, and we cut over to Spider-Man. Peter is trying to swing to a building to meet up with MJ, and as he's changing into his civilian clothes on the roof, the cops actually burst through to the roof, and he has to quickly dive off the roof, hang on to the side of the building, and continue getting dressed. He completely forgot that because of this slasher guy going around, wherever there's like supermodels, there's been extra security. So as he's climbing around the building, we get an introduction, to say the least, to Elise, this new supermodel character that is friends with MJ. We see her in the mirror, like checking herself out, talking about how she doesn't like how she looks. She thinks she's ugly, when she's obviously drawn to be like a gorgeous supermodel. So she's like really tough on herself. MJ walks in. We kind of see them, you know, catch up, and we are introduced to another new character, Harvey Finkelstein. He's kind of this like groupie stalker that's really into Elise, but she's really not interested. She just kind of finds him cute, and it's like fun for her to have like a groupie, somebody following her around. So she kind of shoos him off, and Peter ends up showing up, but not before bumping into him in the hallway, and Peter's spidey senses kind of go off last minute. So Peter's introduced to Elise. They kind of have a couple moments to get to know each other. And then MJ and Peter have to go, so they get into a cab. Peter's talking about how he's got to go on this assignment out of town to make some money so he can pay for his taxes, his quarterly taxes, and it turns out that MJ has already actually paid for them, and he's kind of like a little upset by this, like disappointed, like, oh, I didn't realize my rich wife paid for, like, you're married, dude, come on.
She probably did it when she did her taxes.
Yeah. So we see that he's kind of like thinking about like, well, is this assignment even really necessary? Who knows? We cut over to the unemployment office where we see Harvey Finkelstein and then like I thought it was just some random dude at first, but it turns out that it's Harvey's friend Leslie. They're standing in the unemployment line because they are wannabe actors and cannot get work. So Harvey comes up with this idea to pretend to be the slasher, or to have his friend be the slasher, to make Elise think that she's in danger so he could swoop in and save her, and she'll view him as a hero. So as this is happening, we kind of get like a Mission Impossible style like explanation of the plan. So we're seeing him explain it while it's happening. Leslie breaks in. He's got like the knife, pulls it on Elise. She kind of screams. MJ, I think it shows up, or is that Dakota North? Somebody shows. I think it's Dakota North. I know they're both drawn the exact same way. Yeah. Oh right. Yes, it is MJ and Peter. Peter starts chasing Leslie as he jumps out the fire escape once he realizes that there's other people there. So their plan has kind of been like called off. So then we kind of get a meeting with everybody: Dakota, Ricky, Elise, MJ, and Peter. And Peter's kind of like upset about like not being able to catch him. His spider senses weren't going off because he wasn't in danger, so he couldn't track him down. He's really thinking like, I'm not leaving town now. There's no way I'm like putting MJ at risk because this guy is after serial killers. So we cut over to Harvey and Leslie as they're kind of like lamenting about the plan not working. And then Harvey notes that Leslie has like newspaper clippings of all of the slashers victims hung up on his wall, and he's got like a table full of knives. So Harvey's kind of like suspicious, and Leslie just kind of brushes it off like, oh, it's just for research purposes. I'm an actor, aren't I? Come on. So a few days go by and they're at this like big fashion expo that's at the circus, or like a fair. This is kind of where they think everything's going down. So it turns out that Peter does skip on the photography assignment. He takes the bus to the expo, and it just so happens that both Harvey and Leslie are on the bus as well, and they're kind of having the same thoughts, like, I'm not going to blow it this time, whatever. It's kind of interesting that they're both sneaking around trying to like finish something and like have similar goals, but they're on opposite sides of the plot. Dakota North is there. She's expecting something to go down as well. So she walkie-talkies Ricky, tells him that he wants him to show up to kind of watch over some of the supermodels. Peter gets caught sneaking into the building by the cops because they're really on the lookout for the slasher. Leslie ends up making his way into the dressing room of Elise. And because Peter's caught up with the cops, he's not able to get there in time. So MJ is kind of like fighting this guy, smashing him with bottles. Peter ends up breaking out of the police and starts like running towards the building. Leslie's now like on top of Elise and they're fighting. MJ is kicking him. Leslie makes a run for it once Peter shows up as Spider-Man, and Peter swings MJ out of the way to safety, and Dakota North and Spider-Man decide that they're going to go after them. Dakota says to go meet up with Elise and MJ and make sure that they're okay, and she would handle Leslie getting away. And Peter, not wanting the bad guy to get away, he also chases Leslie. And they have this like ridiculous motorcycle chase over like the roller coaster and everything. And they finally catch the guy, and Dakota's like, "You're an idiot. I told you to go help them." MJ, you might have just written MJ's death sentence because I don't think that this is the slasher. And we cut back to Elise, and she pulls a knife on MJ, and it turns out that she has been the slasher the entire time. Spider-Man shows up just in the nick of time to stop what's going on, and Dakota finally makes her arrest on the slasher as things kind of wrap up, and that's pretty much the conclusion that we get in the story. So yeah, it's an interesting fill-in. It's not like most other fill-ins. I feel like a lot of the other ones are kind of like cartoony and goofy, and it's like an excuse for them to kind of just make a ridiculous story. And while this does have some like ridiculous moments, it feels kind of more grounded in a way. I don't know. What did you think, Mike?
Well, I mean, Jim Owsley, we all know, was the editor for Spider-Man for a few years, was recently fired, he was fired. So this must be, I'm guessing, at least 6 months old, this fill-in.
Wow.
But MJ is married to Peter.
Oh, but that just takes, like, you know, a little bit of dialogue. I mean, do they show them in bed together?
No.
See, yeah,
no,
so it's probably...
he's visiting her, and they do kiss, though.
Well, it's debatable, but I'm just
yeah.
thinking that because it's Jim Owsley, I don't know. I just think that, I mean, he was like so out the door already that I imagine it was just one line of dialogue they could have changed to make it fit in with continuity. But also, like, even this artist, Steve Geiger, like, he's from a year earlier. So it just feels more like a comic from a year ago, maybe in Spider-Man continuity. I don't know. I honestly didn't really like this issue because... I don't know. I mean, I like the idea of doing a murder mystery, but the little twist where we think for a while that, what's the guy's name? Poindexter?
Leslie or
Finkelstein?
Harvey?
Finkelstein, whatever. When we think, oh, maybe he's the killer, but then he pretends. Well, first he pretends to be the killer. He hires. I don't know, that whole thing. I didn't like that, though, and how awkwardly it transitioned from him getting the idea to narrating the idea to the idea happening as it's happening, like as he's describing it. And then the twist with the girl was pretty good, but overall, I just thought it was rushed at the end, and I don't know.
Yeah, no, I thought that it was Harvey right at the beginning, and then once the whole like Leslie like red herring happened, I was like, oh, are you kidding me? They're going to be that obvious about it? Right. Yeah, so I was not convinced Elise had anything to do with it.
It's so funny that you guys don't really enjoy this one because I was like living for it.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, okay. I have to explain myself. Like in the 90s, there was this show after Melrose Place. There was a spinoff called Models Inc. that Aaron Spelling had created. And it was like, this is the premise where it's like they're models in a modeling agency, but for some reason they're just like plagued with like murder, sex scandals, like just ridiculous drama. And this is it reminded me exactly of this. And I'm like, this is great. This is, you know, when Becca says stuff like, oh, I wish we, you know, got more character and world building from like MJ's world. This is exactly what I expect.
Right.
Because it's like, okay, cool. MJ's like this model that can more than, we know her as being able to more than be able to afford a lifestyle for both her and Peter. But we don't see anything about the seedy underbelly. Because if Peter lives in a world of danger, why shouldn't MJ, right? So it's like a caper at a theme park doesn't seem too far off. That's kind of funny. And then again, like the red herring and then the twist that the actual serial killer is Elise is just as far-fetched as the weekly plots of Models Inc.
Right.
Like there's no building to it. There's just like they introduce everything and solve nothing. Like so ridiculous.
Yeah, I think I had the most fun reading this one this week. because of just how crazy it was. Almost like a Scooby-Doo episode.
Mm-hmm.
How like it's taking itself seriously, but also knows that it's kind of like a joke, if that makes sense. Like it's not like pretentious taking itself seriously, but like the characters are taking themselves seriously. Right. So there is some messiness in the middle with Harvey and Leslie. There's a lot of new characters, which I guess is kind of needed for a murder mystery. Like nobody's going to suspect that MJ is the murderer, or like, any of the regular roster. Of course, it's going to be a new character. So it's understandable that they're going to need to introduce a couple of new characters to kind of keep us guessing as to who it's going to be, whether it be like the sergeant or Dakota or Ricky, even, because Ricky is like, part of the like Dakota's brother, and is always at these modeling events because she's investigating what's going on. So it would be like a perfect way for him to do it. So there's like, I think that they did a pretty good job of introducing a bunch of new characters for such a small comic, but yeah, it was fine. I had fun with it. It's not the best story, but a pretty good fill-in.
Yeah, the level of intrigue is like, it's superficial, but like the kind of superficial that is enjoyable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I want to point out Dakota North is actually a rare Marvel character who had her own series who does not have any superpowers. She was just a private detective who got her own series that lasted 5 issues from June 86 to February 87. And then it was canceled, and then she went on to appear in this issue of Spider-Man, 1 issue of Power Pack, and then Marvel Superheroes, and then she became a guest star in Cage, which is Luke Cage. And she disappeared and then came back here and there. But yeah, she's just one of those oddball characters. I think she was created by a woman named Martha Thomasis and Tony Salmons, but I think it came out of Larry Hama's office. Larry Hama is the creator of G.I. Joe, and so he was always trying to like push for different genres of characters. Like he also created the Wolf Pack and Nth Man and some other non-superhero characters. And issue 1 of Dakota North was reviewed on an episode of Flea Market Fantasy, so be sure to check it out. It's pretty good, actually.
Issue 1 of Dakota North?
Yeah.
Oh, well,
yeah. So check it out.
Cool.
It's like a cop show. It's like a pretty cool comic. Yeah.
That's a pretty cool idea too. Is like having a PI who's just a person, but they investigate like superhero stuff. Like that's their specialty. That's a pretty interesting idea.
I think, to be honest, she stuck with non-superhero stuff. So it was even weirder because she was in the Marvel universe, but in her book it was just like, diamonds go missing and whatever. It was just typical stuff like that. So yeah, it was pretty cool.
Yeah, because here's the thing, like her character, I would say, is like the most intriguing because she knows Peter is Spider-Man. And there are a couple clues when this happens, right?
I didn't notice that.
She says there's like a part where there's her and Spidey have an exchange, and then in a thought bubble she's like, but I wouldn't expect you to answer that.
Okay. Okay.
I can't remember what the exchange is. Let me see if I can find it. But while I'm flicking, at the end as well, because she might suspect that Peter is Spider-Man, at the end when she goes after Leslie and tells Peter to go find Mary Jane and Elise, knowing that Elise is the actual slasher, she knows that Peter, who is Spider-Man, would want to be where Mary Jane is. So she tells him to do it and says, why the hell didn't you do what I told you to do? Without, she told, like, you know what I mean? She might have suspected that they were the same person, but she didn't let on that she knew. But she definitely knows.
It totally makes sense too, because if she's a PI, like following around models to make sure that they're okay and kind of like investigating their personal lives, Peter's not careful with his identity.
No.
Right.
at all. As we can see at the beginning of the issue when he almost gets caught by the cops. He's always like dropping in his like from his sun not sunroof. Oh my god.
Oh,
Skylight. Yeah.
You know, right on top of the building. It's pretty suspicious that like Spider-Man is always jumping to the same building and then disappearing. So it makes sense that she would have some sort of idea. I think MJ even almost slips at some point in this issue, right? And almost calls him Peter.
Yeah. She says, Spider-Man.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. So when she goes looking for Ricky and she calls Ricky on the walkie-talkie, and it shows a scene where Ricky is keeping an eye on the girls, but really he's just talking to babes. It shows her running into Spider-Man. Spider-Man swings in and she's like, sounds like our man. I could use a lift. Then she says, I'm tempted to ask what you're doing here, but you wouldn't tell me that, now would you? And like in Peter's thought bubble, all he's thinking is, "Where's Mary Jane? Where's Mary Jane?" And to me, that is like, she gets it. Mm-hmm. Why would Spider-Man be at this modeling competition?
Yeah,
or like this modeling thing at a theme park? Why is he always around Mary Jane? Like someone like her would pick up on that.
Yeah,
I mean, literally anyone should be able to pick on that. Actually,
yeah.
Like, you're right. He's not careful at all.
Yeah. So it was a pretty fun issue. Again, it's got some problems, but as far as villains go, it's like really good.
Yeah, it's not bad. What do you guys think of this cover by Al Milgrom?
Let me go back all the way to the top.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, it's not bad. It's like a Frank Miller Sin City-esque cover.
There's something off about it.
Well, the anatomy, but
yeah,
it's a good idea. Yeah, it's not perfect, but it's a good idea.
Yeah, like I can see what they're going for graphic-wise. Mm-hmm. I will say the thing that made this kind of a stinker was the way that they treated Dakota. There was just so much misogyny that I was like, are they playing this for laughs?
Especially at the beginning, right? With like the sergeant.
Yeah. Anytime anyone refers to her or if she's in the room and like someone has to talk to her, they're like toots or whatever the hell. Oh, they're always calling her
Dak, right?
Yeah, or like what did he say? What he's like whenever he refers to her as a
Miss Hotshot.
Yeah, like little, like he makes a joke about it's like, shouldn't you be shopping for skirts? And I mean, she does say, well, here's the thing, like, well, I guess now that we're done, I'm gonna go shopping for skirts, like you. But
yeah, I thought it was handled pretty well, considering that she, like, I feel like it was meant to be misogynistic, right? Like the police officers treating her shittily, and then her like standing up for herself and being the one to like solve it at the end is like really great. And it also kind of shows her character that like she's not gonna just explode. She's gonna kind of like keep doing her job. She needs to work with the police to figure out what's going on. So she kind of just like swallows her pride and moves on and kind of like says a sly comment as she walks away. So yeah, she was a really fun character and I think written pretty well.
I mean, I think this would be, kind of like Jessica Jones, right? This would be a great TV show, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. What I really liked about this too, especially it being a villain, is that it really feels like MJ and Peter belong in the story. There's a lot of times with things like this where it's like brand new characters in like a murder mystery, like new genre type of setting. It kind of just feels like they've plucked Peter from his story and threw him into somebody else's. But it was really nice that it, like, throughout the comic, they're tied into everything that's going on. Right. And it didn't feel jarring at all.
Right. Good point. So the question is, do we recommend it?
I would recommend it. It's not the best issue, but I had a lot of fun. Maybe the most fun out of the three. I enjoyed reading. Is it the best of the stories? Maybe not, but as far as fill-ins go, it's pretty darn good. Yeah.
Yeah, Jolie.
Yes. I would be like, if someone was like, "Is there a Spider-Man comic I should read as a woman?" And I would say, I don't know. Did you watch Melrose Place or Models Inc? Did you like 90210 or It's Like Reboot? Then, if the answer is yes, please read this one issue of Web of Spider-Man because it's the best. Why is this the most fun I've ever had? Why does it have to be like Supermodel Caper? It's ridiculous. Sorry, Peter. I know you think I hate everything, but I don't. I love this one. Yes, I recommend it.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's kind of like
I called Paul Peter.
Okay,
I'm so terrible. I'm the worst. I'm the worst Paul fan in the world.
But it is another way to do a Spider-Man story. It's almost like if this was like, Peter Parker, the TV show, where, like, if they were to do a Spider-Man TV show in the 70s, they wouldn't have the budget for Spider-Man. So you'd only see Spider-Man once at the beginning and the end. And in between, he would just solve a crime or help solve a crime, right? Like the Hulk TV show.
It almost felt like how Peter Parker, the Spectacular Spider-Man, felt when we first started the podcast. It was more of those like grounded stories about him and his friends in college. Yes. That's kind of what this felt like. And I'd love to see more stories like this. Well,
you're not going to, because we're not going to have any more fill-ins or stories by Jim Owsley. So yeah, back to superhero fun. I recommend it, but I think I liked it less than you guys did, but I did at least appreciate what they were trying to do. I just felt it was the plot was rushed.
Yeah.
So there, I'll leave it at that. And with that, go ahead, Jolie.
It's like, why couldn't this be your 3-story arc?
Yeah.
They'd F it up somehow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, and with that, we are going to jump to Amazing Spider-Man 299, the second issue by Todd McFarlane.
I am so rusty when it comes to recapping. Usually Becca does amazing, so I'll try to be as vicious about Chance as possible because I don't like him. Doesn't matter.
Yeah, that's fair.
Okay, before we go on though, does anyone else, I love Todd McFarlane, but does anyone else find the webbing, I know it's a very special thing that he does, but I find it very distracting.
Well, it's kind of, that's the argument, is like, yes, it looks pretty, but it doesn't, it's pointless.
Is it pretty though?
Well, I liked it. Like when I was a kid, I was obsessed with Todd McFarlane, right? And one of the things is the spaghetti webbing. It's like I would sit there and draw my own spaghetti webbing, right? Because, the regular Spider-Man webbing is just 3 lines and some connecting lines, but this is so much fun to draw. So I don't know.
Yeah, I like it. I personally like it, but I think it's just because it's also like what I'm used to and what I grew up with. So I totally get it though. It is at times just like way over the top. So I can see how it could be distracting. Like even when he's just like swinging regularly, he's got so much of it in his hand. It almost feels like a cowboy with a lasso. Like they have all of the slack in their hand at like, ready to whip it. But it's I don't know. I think that's kind of the fun of it.
Okay.
For me. Or
maybe it's just the way Bob McLeod inks it. Because I don't remember it being so involved.
That could be part of it, yeah.
I think later on, too, it becomes less thick. And it's kind of a little bit thinner. It still has like the spaghettiness of it, but right now it feels almost like a big thick rope where normally it feels almost like a thin strand of webbing. Yeah. And I think later on it's kind of a little bit more refined and doesn't feel as like gigantic too. So
Okay. All right, so let's get to the story. It's not a stinker, but it follows in the footsteps of the last issue. It's called Survival of the Hittest, and it kind of leaves off Spidey's kind of, he's on top of a truck and he's like thinking about what just happened. So who was it from the office that sent him on an assignment? Joy? Mercado?
think so.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she's like, you want to make some extra money? I got this story that needs photos. You go do it. And you can have this, we can split the take. Which is really nice of her to identify that, like, you know, she's saving his manhood from, you know, absolutely crumbling into nothing. Because he cannot stand the fact that he cannot make ends meet at home. Even though MJ is loaded. Doesn't matter, whatever. So he's kind of like recapping what happened the last time. As we all know, really quickly, he went to take the photos of this arms deal happening, and Chance flies in and like interrupts the arms deal. And that's how they've gotten entangled with each other. To be honest, I don't really remember a lot of the plot of the Chance plot because it's boring and terrible, but he does make it home after kind of like lamenting and flinging himself around. He makes it home and he finds a note on the skylight that says, the skylight's being repaired. Love, the front doorman. Oh wait, it says, skylight repairman, please use front door. And he goes, that's weird. This, like we all do. That's weird. The skylight is in my bathroom. How did the repairman get into my bathroom? He uses the front door. He finds out that MJ has hired, he gets home in his stinky clothes. MJ has hired a maid because she has a certain level of outward cleanliness she has to maintain. And she's like, oh, I put that note there just for you because I didn't want you to accidentally come out of the bathroom dressed as Spider-Man like you usually do, which was actually really cute and smart. And exactly the kind of shenanigans a married Spider-Man should be up to. Like it's a really, like it's a cute marital break in the plot. So we cut to where the arms have been taken. And it's somewhere called the Sanctum Maximus, and that is where... Why is that funny?
I don't know why.
It's just ridiculous, the name.
Yeah.
The man in the chair, that's Chance, right? When he's out of his costume?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. It doesn't really tell us much. It's just an exchange. They talk about the Life Foundation, and that, like, whatever it is they're doing, this will be like the biggest money maker for them in a long time, but they don't tell us what they're going to do. So cut to more married shenanigans, which honestly is what I'm here for. They go to a club called The Spawning, which I am dead certain is a reference to Spawn.
Well, no, Spawn didn't exist yet.
Yeah.
What?
No.
Mm-hmm.
This is 5 years before McFarlane.
So this is Todd McFarlane just like manifesting his destiny.
I mean,
cute. I'm here for that.
The only thing, I mean, maybe he had him created him as a fan, and we just didn't know it yet. It's possible, but I don't know.
That's really cool, actually. Yeah, this is him manifesting. So MJ and Peter has allowed MJ to drag him out to a nightclub called The Spawning, and they're like dressed in some 80s finery.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
This, I cannot get over MJ's outfit. I am in love with that. I also am in love with what Peter is wearing.
God.
Let's just say shoulder pads for days.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Miami
Pop
Vice
collar.
Right?
Cool
Really,
shades.
really thin pencil tie. Also, she's like he's talking about how he could get used to her knowing all these like fancy people and like going out all the time, and she says, "Hey, Eddie." And she waves at a black man who is supposed to be Eddie Murphy.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Why did I think it was? Because he says, the comedian, you know him? And I was like, but the comedian is DC. Like, that's how my brain works. Because isn't the comedian from DC, from Watchmen?
Oh, you mean Watchmen? No, yeah, but it just means...
It means Eddie Murphy. He's a comedian.
Like he's a stand-up comedian, yeah.
Yeah, and it's so funny because I come from my Eddie Murphy generation does not know his stand-up comedy.
Stand-up.
I just know him for like the Nutty Professor.
Okay.
Well, do you know what? The one before that where they make a perfume that smells like vagina, and then not vagina. It smells like placenta. That's it.
Yeah, what's that called? Flubber?
No.
Oh, I don't know.
Flubber's with the
Why do I think it's called
Williams.
Heat? No, it's not Heat either. Oh, I'm sorry, Eddie Murphy fans. We're doing you wrong. It was like pretty adult movie, and then he just pivoted and did like kids movies.
Okay.
Anyway,
yeah.
I confused him for Eddie. It was like, why is the comedian at this nightclub? Because it's Eddie Murphy. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Who's the guy in the glasses?
I gotta click back. At first I thought it was Paul Schaefer. I think it might be Paul Schaefer.
Oh, like from the Tonight Show band?
Dave Letterman, yeah. Late Show, yeah.
Oh, sorry. Also, hey, oh, Canada.
Well, McFarlane's Canadian. Maybe that's why.
Gagging. I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Every day is a classroom, people. And some days you learn who's a Canadian.
Yeah, I think he's from out west.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'm just quickly like forgiving some sins in my head. I'm like, oh, that's fine. Maple syrup. Okay. So it cuts back to a construction site where they have Chance locked to a chair. I don't know who they are. I don't know why they have him. I just know that they have him.
So this
I might need your help, folks.
Stupid and convoluted. I find this is like my big problem with it. This is the Life Foundation. They're the ones that hired him last issue. And it turns out that it was like a setup, I guess.
Okay.
To get him to fail stealing from themselves.
Oh, what?
It doesn't make sense. I don't get it because he gets zapped when he goes back to be like, I failed the assignment. The head of the Life Foundation zaps him and puts him in this chair and puts him back into the truck full of ammo that he was supposed to be stealing.
No.
To transport him here to the chair. It just doesn't make sense. Maybe I'm missing something. I don't know, Mike. Maybe you can
fill us in a little bit.
Fill us in, but from what I remember,
the plot is actually complicated in a way that I'm not sure if it's over my head or if it doesn't make sense.
Poorly written.
Yeah, I can't tell, but I do admire it for like underneath there is like a level of the plot that I think is pretty clever. But I don't honestly really know what the hell is going on.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so
because
anyway,
they need his tech to pull off this thing that they want to do.
But
instead of just like pretending to give him a job and then zapping him while giving him the fake plans for the job, they actually send him on a fake job that they know that they're going to fail, trying to steal stuff from themselves so that way he'll come back to the same office and get zapped. Like it was super weird, and we don't really get that in here, but I'm just like, why? Yeah, I don't know. It's strange. Yeah,
so they've stripped him of his blasters, his ankle jets. Ankle jets? Yes, ankle jets. Because that's the technology that they need. It doesn't really tell you who is doing it at first. Because it keeps cutting back to MJ and Peter. And it seems like MJ and Peter are like guest starring in a comic book about the Life Foundation. It's so weird. Because Peter is being kept up at night. There is still a truck full of military grade weapons that is out in the hands of somebody, and he doesn't know what to do. He's beside himself, and he's keeping MJ awake. And like any newlywed couple, she is not going to bitch him out about it. She's just going to be there for him. But let me tell you, in about 8 years, she's going to be having none of that. she's just gonna be staying at work later to avoid this BS. Anyway, so he goes to work, and he's still kind of mulling over, and runs into Robbie. Robbie, who we have known to just he's already told him that like he should get another job somewhere else if he's not finding, like, if this freelance thing is not going to work out. And like, I don't know what it is. It's not like he said it maliciously. The first time he said it to Peter, he said it from a place of love. But Peter is just remaining at the Daily Bugle for some reason. And it's also like Robbie gets it. It's not to spite him either. Whatever. We all know he's insecure. But then he does say, wait a second. I can't do that today. I'm going back to school. Like, as if to say, okay, I heard you about like doing other stuff, so I'm going back to school, which just means he's going to the high school where he taught a couple classes like a few episodes ago. I can't remember why, but he goes to see Annie in the office. Oh, that's right. He goes to break into her computer, which she knows he's there to do. And allows him to do it anyway. She's like, oh, don't look at my computer for that information you obviously need while I'm away for 5 minutes. And then he looks and he finds a rent-free lease from somebody named Drake. And that's how he finds out where the Life Foundation is. So he dons the Spidey costume, breaks in to the Life Foundation, finds the ammunition, because he's like, oh, that's really what he's concerned about. Like, who's going to get it, just in case someone is killed by all of this stuff. And then he runs into Chance, who is strapped to that chair. And Chance tells him, kind of like, they kind of have a conversation. He tells him why he's there. And sort of in a roundabout way tells the audience about the really convoluted plot that we just told you we don't really understand. And then he asks Spider-Man to help him out. And I don't know why Spider-Man agrees. Like, I don't know I can't remember what Chance, I called him Chase. I don't know what Chase offered him, but he says, sure. Like, they call a truce. They'll get out of this thing together. And they, like, fly out of there. Like, actually fly out of there together. Like, Spider-Man is webbed to his stomach. It's very weird. That's kind of... He's like, hey, guy, you can fly. And we're out in the suburbs again. You know what it means for me when I'm out... Actually, we're out in the woods. You know what it means for me when I'm out where I can't be webby. Means I gotta take a bus back into Manhattan. So Chance agrees to fly him back into town. Which means he's not home. He's currently like getting a lift. Anyway, it cuts back to their Chelsea apartment, and MJ, who is kind of like mad at Peter. She's coming in with groceries. It's late. She's like, I would really appreciate if like Peter was more considerate of me. Like, what's up with him? I don't know. And she opens the door, turns on a light, but the light doesn't fully illuminate the room. And she, assuming that the presence that she feels and the black suit that she sees is Peter, starts talking to him and stops herself and says, that's weird. You're breathing kind of funny. Like, did you have a crazy night? And italics, in italics, he says, hi, honey. And she knows immediately it's Venom. And that's where it ends.
Well, she doesn't know who it is. She just knows it's not Peter.
Well,
yeah, it's obviously not Peter. His mouth is full of sharp teeth.
Yeah.
So
we'll talk about Venom at the end. Let's just talk about the rest of it first. I think that, I mean, if we remember that David Michelinie was the one writing Web during that weird run where they were dealing with like Irish terrorists. Remember that? Like the underground city. This is kind of closer to that, where like we're gonna try and have a complicated plot with the characters you don't know, and we'll get Spider-Man involved with it and deal with a little bit of politics. But I think that coming soon with Todd McFarlane as an artist, he starts to exert his influence more, and it becomes more of like, okay, you know what? Screw all this. Let's just bring back Dr. Octopus and Hobgoblin and Green Goblin and Mysterio, and let's just do superhero fun. But for now, we got a plot like this, which I think was okay. But again, halfway through, I was like, what is going on? What are they doing? Why?
Yeah.
So it's kind of like last issue, you know, where I did enjoy it, but it was kind of all over the place.
Yeah, it wasn't always clear as to what the Life Foundation wanted or what they were doing or what their plan was. I was kind of like not as into this comic after like not fully understanding what's going on. I was just kind of like lost. So I still don't fully know why they needed his tech. I don't remember. They're smuggling ammunition, but it's theirs, right? Like,
right.
They had access to it still even after they sent the guy that they hired to go get it. Like, I don't know. It's a little confusing. It's really weird that Peter trusts him so quickly. Like he offers, like, Peter jumps through the ventilation system. The first thing that Chance says is essentially, "Oh, you jumped through the vents. That's pretty cool. Hey, if you get me out of here, I'll tell you everything that's going on." And Peter immediately is just like, "Okay, yeah, sure." Like, doesn't question it, not at all. He even has this like evil smile when he says it, like, "And I'll tell you everything." Like, I'm thinking, oh, he's lying.
Right.
But no, I guess they're just working together. It's just really strange that they teamed up in this issue. And that he didn't like double cross Peter.
Yeah.
But
yeah. And I don't even know, to be honest, if we ever even see Chance again. So
he's just gone.
Yeah, maybe
the last panel we see of him is Spider-Man is like straddling his shoulders as he flies away. Like, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, like, I don't know what's more ridiculous. Okay, I do know what's more ridiculous. But like, he's like, after they fling themselves out of there, Chance is like, "Thanks for your help, Spider-Man. Of course, that won't change things when we meet without a truce. But at least let me offer you a lift back to Manhattan." Like, wait, what?
Yeah, it's really weird.
You're not friends. And you're clearly nowhere near Manhattan. I don't even like to take a ride for 20 minutes with one of my like aunts and uncles. What? You are going to let this guy straddle your neck all the way back to Manhattan?
Yeah, it's really strange. I feel like I kind of liked their dynamic together when they were teamed up, but it just felt really weird because it was out of left field. Like, I kind of hope that Chance sticks around now and that they kind of have this like almost like a Spider-Man and Black Cat dynamic where he's a bad guy, but he kind of does it for the right reasons, and he's like kind of a good guy when he needs to, without the whole like shitty relationship part of it, you know? But I kind of like that they're like buddies in this.
He hand sews him a new costume, which is like kind of on the nose.
Yeah. He's the one that reintroduces the red and blues.
Yep. Look what I made you. We're best friends.
Yeah.
So let's talk about some Todd McFarlane art here, because we kind of have to. On page 3, there's a great shot of Spider-Man riding on top of the truck.
Yeah.
And I just love the way McFarlane draws his black costume. How it's solid black with just blue little like thin highlights, right? But almost zero shading and muscle and anything. It's
not black. It doesn't even look like highlights. It's just like the silhouette, like outlines. Yeah. Normally you have like these thick shading to show like definition and tone in his like muscles, but it's just like solid pitch black. It's super interesting.
Yes.
I also love the panel layout. It's so great, so like new and fresh. When you see like Spidey in his profile, and because he's all black, it kind of like fades to an all black panel, and there's like the panel of him, like of the truck, like
Optimus
swerving
Prime.
out of the way
Yeah.
on top of it. Yeah. It is literally Optimus Prime too. And then like when they're introducing like new sets, like they have like these really cool establishing shots that are like at the top of the pages, and it's not a full panel from side to side. It's kind of like a third of the way in to the page it starts, and then to the left it has like a description of what's going on, almost like a script.
Which
pointing,
page is that?
That's like anytime they go to a new scene. So like when they're at the facility, you see the truck parked out of the outside of the building, and it says New Jersey. Construction continues on what appears to be a small city hidden beneath a gargantuan camouflage dome. The next page, Chelsea Street, an early morning moonshine. Yeah. Like, it's really cool. It feels like a script.
And then the next
introducing
one,
new
God,
Manhattan.
Then the next one, Empire State University,
Daily Bugle,
State Road G2. I never noticed that. Holy shit.
I love it, and all of the panels are the exact same size. It's just like introducing where it is, and it's almost like a title screen as well. Like when a movie, like when the setting changes in a movie and they like say the city that they're in now, it kind of feels like that. So like when they go to Manhattan to the Daily Bugle, the close up is of the Daily Bugle sign on the building. The next one, it's the ESU campus plaque outside of the building. It's the Chelsea apartments like etched into the stone in the actual building. Yeah. There's just so many small little moments like that are like fresh and new, and kind of like it doesn't change what's happening, but it's like fresh and it's interesting to look at, and it's easier to read these stories because like we're getting new things that we don't normally get in comics, especially Spidey comics, because they've been kind of like static. Yeah, almost the entire time of us reading them for this podcast, they've kind of all had the same tone and feel. Mm-hmm. So it's just super fun to kind of get these new panel layouts and stuff.
Well, you know what? Frank Miller had a great quote in the 80s, and he said that comic books were stuck in the golden age for like 50 years. And I know exactly what he means, and it's what you're talking about. Of course, there's great art and there's great comics at this time, but it was like everything was the same. Everything was following the same pattern, the same style. And here, look, like you just said, it's like McFarlane may have problems with anatomy, and you can criticize him if you don't like it, but he had a natural sense of design and a natural sense of storytelling, and this organizes it better than these. You know, we've read comics where, you know, like we have one big panel and then a small panel cuts off a guy's head, and it's like no thought at all to the layout of the page. And here, like you just said, establishing shot and then scene, establishing shot, scene, and we have 5 scenes in a row that are exactly laid out that way, and I think it's great. You're right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I can excuse poor anatomy if what I'm looking at is still interesting.
Yeah, me too.
I think that's the big difference. I'd rather see Spider-Man in that pose of him on the truck where he's like completely stretched out. His like he's so crouched that his like knees are past his shoulders. Yep. Like no person could ever do that, and it's even almost weird that Spider-Man is doing it, but it just looks so cool and interesting and new that I don't care. Like I don't care that doesn't look like a human doing that. It's because it just flat out works. Even later on, like there's a huge splash page after Chance blows up the ammo crates and everything is exploding, and he's flying away, and Spider-Man is kind of like attached to him by webbing. Spider-Man does not look good in that big splash page. Like not even a little bit.
Oh yeah, he looks okay.
But I don't care. You know what I mean? Like I don't care. It's such an interesting, dynamic, fun page that it's like I don't care that it doesn't look exactly like a human looks. It's just so much fun seeing Chance fly towards the screen, and we see all the webs attached to him, and Spidey swinging behind him, and those spaghetti webs are like whipping around, and like the huge explosions behind. Like it's just so fun and dynamic that I'd rather see something like this than see kind of just like 6-panel page that has like the best anatomy I've ever seen.
Yeah, and that's... Oh, go ahead, Jolie.
Oh, no, I was just going to make a comment about the anatomy. Like, there are most people who, like, sit and doodle. When they doodle, like, I'm an eye doodler. But you can tell McFarlane, even though his anatomy isn't perfect, this dude was a hand doodler because he's actually really good in hands. Like, scarily good. He understands... If he doesn't understand the bone structure completely, he's doodled hands so frequently that you wouldn't even be able to tell.
Yep.
If he understood it or not, because like they just look really good. Whether they're in a glove, whether they're just like a bare hand, this dude knows it. Like there's really weird scenes where like Peter's eyes are way bigger than they should be on his head, and they're placed weird. But it's like, nah, it doesn't matter. This guy's like good at other stuff,
right? And that's the thing is, yeah, maybe he could have developed his anatomy a little bit, but it was such a breath of fresh air, you know, at the time. And again, he might have been self-taught, but he was doing things that, especially to me as a kid, were so appealing. Like, for example, we brought up earlier about when he's in his black costume and he's got this blue outline, right? Well, let's keep in mind, you know, as has been pointed out, the black lines on humans do not exist, right? Like, when an artist draws a black line to show a hand, that black line doesn't exist. It's a representation of what our eyes see, right? Like translated into cartoon form. And this is the same thing, but opposite, where if this was a movie, I would love to see a adaptation where Spider-Man's black costume is solid black. However, the downside is you can't really do that blue highlight. Like, how would you possibly do that in a live action movie? You couldn't, right? It's impossible. But in a comic book, you can. So I think that's cool.
Yeah, he definitely takes advantage of the style. He takes advantage of the fact that this is in a comic book visual medium.
Yep.
And it's not a movie, it's not a TV show. Like this could only exist in this format.
You got it. And I'm going to say one last thing before we wrap up. Amazing. Spawn was created in 1977 when Todd McFarlane was a teenager, which means Jolie's Easter egg, it could be a reference to Spawn. So there you go.
Awesome.
Yeah, actually, I went through the trouble of digging up a actual, let me see if I can find it here. Where did I get it? Okay, here we go, folks. Take a look. This is Todd McFarlane's very first drawing of Spawn when he was 16, which is actually pretty close to the costume he used in the end, but it's kind of nice to see that, right?
He kind of looks like a mix between like Captain Britain and Spider-Man. I
always saw like a little bit of the Prowler. If you ever look at the Prowler's costume. Yeah.
Who's the guy that's a pirate?
A pirate?
He kind of looks
that
like
villain.
a swashbuckler.
Yeah, he was in Spidey comics for a while, right?
Oh, you mean
recently?
Rapier?
Rapier.
Yeah, that's him. Yep, there you go.
Okay.
The three main influences for Spawn. Anyway, okay, so I mean, this is not the best issue of Amazing, but I still recommend it. It's McFarlane's second issue. You got to read it. Josh, do you recommend it?
Yeah, I don't think the story is fantastic, but there's really fun moments. It's visually just so appealing. Maybe if this was like later into the run, I'd be a little less hesitant to recommend it, but I think just because it's so like fresh and new and there's so many fun things happening, it's a definite recommend for me.
All right, G.I. Jolie?
I recommend it only based on Mary Jane's costuming. I recommend it for the art. Now I'm seeing all kinds of like, now I want to go, okay, like what Josh mentioned about his paneling. That's like the exact kind of arts comics scholarship that I want to discover in all of like, in going back into these comics. Like, I didn't notice that about McFarlane, and that's kind of what makes him special. And it cannot be a coincidence that he's doing it because he does it several times, right? So it can't just be like, whoops, oh, he didn't mean to do it. which is also fun. It makes me want to look at all of Todd McFarlane's work and go, did you do this? Did you do that here? Because it is such a unique form of storytelling. It's really simple too. And I think it's really, really cool.
I should also point out that there's a huge influence here by Art Adams, by Rick Leonardi, and by Michael Golden. We can't forget them. Also a little bit of Frank Miller. But, you know, Todd McFarlane put it all together, and he made more money than all of them. For good or ill. Anyway, okay, so that wraps it. Oh, yeah, and I recommend this one. So, yeah, that's our amazing review. And now we're going to go to the Spectacular Spider-Man. This is a kind of an important issue because it's Gerry Conway's return to Spectacular. I don't know if you guys know this, but Peter Parker, the Spectacular Spider-Man, was created so that Gerry Conway could have his own Spider-Man book back in 1976. I'm not sure why, but I think what happened was Gerry Conway, in my foggy memory, he was writing amazing. He became editor-in-chief. Everyone hated his guts. He lasted 2 weeks. He quit, was so pissed off, went to DC, came back, and they're like, oh, you're back? Oh, well, we've already got someone on Amazing. Why don't we give you your own book? So they created Peter Parker, the Spectacular Spider-Man. And they got Sal Buscema to be the artist. And then, of course, in typical comic book fashion, Gerry Conway quit after a few issues. And then Bill Mantlo had to pick up the pieces. And then Gerry Conway disappeared and wrote for DC for a bunch of years. It went on to do a TV show called The Father Dowling Mysteries, which you can look up on IMDb. And then came back again to Marvel, and then now he's back on Spider-Man. So they had already given him Web of Spider-Man, but now he's taking over Spectacular as well. So they thought, hey, let's team him up with Sal Buscema, right? Because they're the guys that started this book. And so here we go with the return of the tarantula, who also appeared on the cover of Spectacular Spider-Man #1, if you look it up. It's pretty cool. Anyway, so this issue starts out with Spidey swinging along, thinking about what's going on, and we get a little reference to this family, this Hispanic family who are immigrants. We see a little close-up of their faces here, and that's going to come back later. We cut over to a guy working in the Daily Bugle as like a janitor, you know, cleaning up stuff. He's down in like the boiler room or whatever, and then all of a sudden we see the clicking of some feet walking in, some feet which end in pointed metal toes. Sure enough, it's the feet of the tarantula, La Tarantula, the new one, who has come from his corrupt South American country to murder, I guess they're unpatriotic revolutionaries, whatever you want to call them. But he basically murders this guy by poking him with his... whatever you want to call these, his feet.
Stabbing him with his boot knife. Yeah.
Poking him, yeah. Facebook style.
Give him a little poke.
Give it a poke, little wave. Okay, so anyway, so then Spider-Man's swinging by. He hears a scream. He lands and sees Tarantula running out of the Daily Bugle, and so he confronts him. But just at that moment, there are some Tarantula's buddies come out of the woodworks and start shooting Spidey with a gun. They disappear, and then Tarantula disappears. He's like, what the heck just happened? So Tarantula and his buddies all jump into a van and just take off. And then we cut over to J. Jonah Jameson, who's all pissed off because he's like, I want to know why one of my, janitors was murdered this morning. It sounds funnier when you describe it, but anyway. And then meanwhile, Robbie Robertson is worried about the return of Tombstone, which we saw in Web of Spider-Man 36. We don't know the connection yet, but we're going to find out soon enough. Then we cut to a shot of another lovely shot of Mary Jane modeling in a very, what's
bathing
the word?
suit.
Bathing suit.
Bathing suit.
I was going to say scantily, but what's the word when something's very, small?
Small.
Yeah. A
Tiny?
very,
My minuscule bathing suit.
Yeah, a very minimalist bathing suit. And then we find out that she's friends with a girl named Elvira. I mean, of all the names you could pick, why would you pick Elvira? But she is an illegal immigrant who happens to be working with Mary Jane. So now Mary Jane is on the case. She's going to help her out because this girl's worried that they're going to come and take her away and send her back home. A very topical, topic. today even. Then we cut over to this businessman going to a garbage dumpster. It's almost like a James Bond thing where the dumpster has a hatch on top. And it opens up and he walks in and there's a secret hideout of all these South American guerrillas with all these machine guns who are in contact with a rogue agent from the U.S. government who's helping them track down, illegal immigrants from this country. I don't remember what country it is. Do they say?
No, they just say South American country. Okay.
So anyway, so they show, here's the family I want you to get. And of course, it's the family from the beginning that Elvira happens to be part of. So meanwhile, Spider-Man swings down, meets up with Mary Jane, has lunch with her because they're married. And they hang out,
And you don't have lunch with married people unless you're Betty Brand.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So then it cuts over to Robbie Robertson getting a hot dog, and then he's like looking up at the Kingpin's New York headquarters, and then all of a sudden, and this is kind of an awkward scene. Because, Sal Buscema, our pal Sal Buscema, he is a master storyteller, but this sequence is a little awkward because he sees Tombstone, and he's like 10 feet away, and he follows him, but then all of a sudden, Tombstone somehow sneaks up on him. I don't understand how. Maybe it's because he turned a corner. I don't know.
Yeah, it's super confusing even in like the layout. They're constantly flipping.
Right.
Which side they're on, like screen left or screen right.
Right.
Or page left, page right, whatever you want to say. Yeah, because he's following him at first from left to right. Then all of a sudden it's right to left, and then he shows up on the other side.
Right.
It's super confusing as to how Tombstone kind of like pops out and surprises him. But
so then Tombstone kind of grabs him and is talking tough to him and intimidating him. And so we get a little hint that they have a past together, but we still don't know exactly why, which we'll find out soon enough. Meanwhile, Spidey is swinging along looking for trouble, as he always does. And we find out that I don't remember this. So this is a reporter is trying to find out what's going on here, right? Oh, this is Ben Urich. Ben Urich from the Daily Bugle is trying to find out what's going on with Amnesty. What is this called here? Yeah, with the Amnesty program. And basically these are people who help immigrants, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, so and then Spider-Man's walking along, and of course he runs into a gang of Latino toughs, as were prevalent in all 80s comics in the late 80s, right?
They're just all around.
Yeah. And so he fights them off, and then he's like looking around. He's like, he's like standing on the top of this rooftop. He's like, look at all these. He's like making a little speech. This is America, right? Home of the free, land of the brave. He gets that wrong. And he's like, he sees like families like sitting on top of these buildings. He's like, look at them, lovers and families, parents and kids. All they want is a new life. Is that so much to ask? Where are you, Tarantula? What are you doing here? What's your plan? So then we cut over and we see Tarantula like, kicking a family out of like an apartment, and he's like leaping around, jumping off cars, attacking people, and we see people with machine guns leaning out of the window. So yeah, he's putting these people in their place. So anyway, Mary Jane's on the case. She's still trying to help Elvira, right? So now that she's trying to help Elvira, Spider-Man, Peter Parker, wants to help Elvira. They end up trying to get sanctuary in a church. Tarantula tracks him down, smashes through the window. Then Spider-Man comes in to save the day, but he's got his gun-toting buddies with him. So now they're shooting their guns at Spider-Man. He dodges out of the way. Big fist fight follows. Then all of a sudden, the police are there. Spider-Man's fighting, getting poked, punches him, and then he ends up beating up the what do you want to call these guys? I don't know what they're called. And then all of a sudden, the cops are there. And they're like, well, not the cops, but what are they?
Immigration and Naturalization Services.
Right. And they're like, well, sorry, but actually we have to arrest these people because they're illegal immigrants, right? So I'm sure that some of my coworkers would be happy about this. But anyway, we're not going to mention them by name. So anyway,
shout out.
Yeah, so he's... So then Spider-Man swings away. And basically, Spider-Man kind of loses the day, right? But guess what? The story's not over because we cut back to the garbage dumpster, to the headquarters of Tarantula, and he's like, the traitor escaped, my aides were captured, and the American made me look like a fool. And then the CIA guy's like, I agree. That's why we're going to get you some help. We contacted the Committee for Superpowers. They sent us a freedom fighter like you yourself. Like you, a champion of democracy. Captain America. Now, before I say anything, Josh and Jolie, do you know which Captain America this is?
Well, I mean, he's always been a Nazi, so...
Well, guess what? It's not Steve Rogers.
I assume it's, what's his name?
It's 1988, so it's Johnny Walker.
Yeah,
so
John Walker.
Sorry, go ahead, Jolie.
Wait, Johnny Walker is U.S. agent, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So this is the period of like a year or two where Johnny Walker was Captain America. So it was a very fun time when I started reading comics where all the Marvel characters were like off status quo. Like Hulk was gray, Spider-Man had a black costume, Thor had a different costume, Iron Man had his red and silver costume.
Mm-hmm.
They were all weird. Hulk, oh, did I say Hulk was gray? Captain America was a different guy. It was just a weird time, right? The X-Men were living in Australia. It was a great time for superhero comics. But anyway, so yeah, I love this issue. Now, when I was a kid, I used to reread my Amazing Spider-Mans like every summer. McFarlane, every summer. And I wouldn't reread my Spectaculars or Webs, but now that I'm going back and reading these, I really think that Gerry Conway's writing was better. I mean, I love Dave Michelinie, but I like these better. I think that this is currently the most, I guess you could, for lack of a better term, adult writing in Spider-Man right now. So I thought this comic was really good. G.I. Jolie, what did you think?
I think because I read Amazing before this, and then I read this one next, I appreciated the plot so much more because even though there is a whole smattering of new characters, the underlying plot wasn't a weirdo conspiracy about like ankle jets. And like tricking Chance. They're not tricking La Tarantula to do anything. They're literally telling him to round up illegals.
Right.
And there isn't like some weird twist, and he's not like helping Spider-Man. I like this so much more. Not really sure what the message about immigration is. I mean, I'm sure what it is, but I don't know that it's coming through the way that they want it to. But I like that it's semi-political. I also am into how Robbie has just been so affected by the presence of Tombstone that for the past 3 issues he's just been like zombie eating hot dogs.
Yeah.
Like that's it. That's all he does. He's just been walking around like terrified, eating hot dogs.
Was he eating a hot dog when he saw him last?
I think he was. Yeah,
he was
funny
doing.
enough. Yeah.
That's so funny.
Yep.
Anyway, go ahead, Josh.
This is definitely a more cohesive story. The art is also like on the technical side, I think better, right?
Yeah.
Like the anatomy is great, the inking is fantastic. It feels like the inking, I feel like it makes it almost a different style as well. Like the shadows on Peter's face and or on Spidey's face and close-ups, the fact that like his logo is even stylized in this like almost new look. But I think it just goes to show you how much more creative and fun Todd McFarlane's art is, because I still liked it better, even though this one was on the technical side better, because the paneling is boring at best, and at other times it's super confusing as to what's happening in the layouts, particularly the Robbie Robertson trying to chase down Tombstone, or like it's just not always clear what the layout of the room is and what the actions are that's happening, and you kind of have to rely on some of the dialogue at times to kind of piece together what's happening.
But other than the Robbie Robertson scene, I think the storytelling is pretty clear. I can't find another example of it being confusing, to be honest. Like, I do think his storytelling is better than McFarlane's. I think. But this goes back to last week when we had Cousin Brandon on, where he thought McFarlane was a god and thought Sal Buscema's art was like the worst of any of them. And I was like, I don't know, I can see both because, yeah, obviously Sal Buscema's anatomy's better. It's more professional, everything's polished. But McFarlane is more creative with his layouts. He's more experimental. He takes chances. Here's the thing about Sal Buscema. I love him, but every Sal Buscema mad face is the same mad face. Every happy face is the same happy face, right? So it's like he's really good, but he's not... I guess he's kind of... I don't want to say dull, but... I don't know. It's almost like he just treats it more like a job. But I think he's really good at his job, but it's more like a job to him. And McFarlane's having fun, you know?
Right. Yeah, I think it's not necessarily as confusing as the Robbie Robertson scene, but like even like Tarantula jumping out of the building after chasing the family out of their house. Like he breaks the window and then he jumps out and then he jumps off of something like a car and then he's on the street again. Like it's just not as clear and dynamic as Amazing.
Okay, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it doesn't tell the story of what's happening. It's more the dialogue that I find is telling the story. Where you could probably read Amazing with and just look at the visuals and enjoy and understand what's happening. Now the dialogue did not help in Amazing. Yeah, I'm still lost.
Now here's the other thing we should point out is, Sal Buscema's style radically changed around this time. This is where he started inking himself, but even in the recent issues of Spider-Man that he drew, his style is more angular, right? So here's the thing. Through some detective work, which I actually did, I found out that Ann Nocenti did fire him from New Mutants in the mid-'80s, okay? And replaced him with Bill Sienkiewicz. Okay, so that's one piece of confirmed information. We also know that Sal Buscema completely changed his style around 1987-88. In an interview, someone asked him, where does this influence come from? And he said, oh, well, I've kind of been influenced by Bill Sienkiewicz. Look, he's such a great artist, blah, blah, blah. So my personal conclusion is that I think that in a way he did it to compete. Like, oh, shit. I'm like part of the old Marvel guard and I've been fired from New Mutants, so I've got to compete. So I'm going to incorporate Bill Sienkiewicz's style into my own. And so therefore, that's where we get this, Sal Buscema Mark II, which kind of starts around this time. So, and it's funny because no one's ever come out and said it. So whenever I kind of offer that theory, people think I'm full of shit, on Facebook. But it's pretty logical to draw that conclusion, I think. So I don't know. I don't know.
I like the style. I really like the look of the characters. And it's not that the layout is of like the panels are awful. It's just when you compare it to how dynamic it was, you can tell the difference.
Right. G.I. Jolie, what do you think?
I want a garbage dumpster hideout.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous. And amazing.
Too bad we're missing the trash queen for this episode.
I know, right?
That is exactly how I would envision, like, if Becca were to marry Oscar the Grouch and they had a secret hideaway lair, that would be the front door, right? Because you'd have to keep it full of trash all the time.
Yeah.
Always. It couldn't be one of those like sometimes empty dumpsters. Also, the dumpster people would have to know not to empty it. So maybe the dumpster people are in on it too. Anyway, this is spinning into a whole fantasy of another level. What did I think? I agree with you both about the art. I agree, one, what Josh is saying, that the art, while it's technically like really good, well, it's technically also art, it's not as exciting as what we just saw McFarlane do with the layouts, etc. Sometimes the storytelling is really confusing, like we said, with that thing with Tombstone. But again, like, do you know, and also sometimes with this new style, he's drawing Peter's face really weird.
He's always got that, what's that, furrowed brow.
Mm-hmm.
But that's every character has a furrowed, even Mary Jane has a furrowed brow, yeah.
Right.
But also, like, he also has he's deepened his widow's peak a little bit. Like, he's receded his hairline a little bit more than I'm used to.
And his eyebrows are so bushy, too.
Yeah.
Like, they're really thick.
An ink stroke. And it's like, they don't have to be an ink stroke, though. Let's see. What else? You know what? I agree that it is technically perfect, but this is what's boring to me about the panels, is that there's no range of distance between you and what you're seeing. So like the one where Peter goes to Amnestia, and he sees Ben Urich talking to somebody there, a lawyer, about like, you know, all these illegals, and what they're doing about it. Like he's doing a story or whatever. There's not a lot of range of sets.
No, I totally agree with you, though. Even like during the fight scenes, it's all kind of on the same plane.
Yeah.
And like when action is happening, a lot of the times the characters are in the same exact poses throughout the scene, just kind of varied. Like when the guys are shooting at Spider-Man in the church, he's in the same pose twice when he's like flying away from the bullets and zipping towards Tarantula. And then later on, there's a page where he's punching Tarantula, and it's like 3 panels of his left arm up with a fist, and then you see it from like a different angle, and then you see it from another angle, and we're led to believe that he's punched Tarantula within those 3 panels. And it's like he hasn't really moved his body or his like arms or fist throughout those 3 panels, but we see the thram and we see the Tarantula flying away. So we're led to believe that he was punched. So again, all 3 of those panels look really fantastic by themselves. It's just, it doesn't tell the story that he got punched.
Exactly. Another example of where the art is technically good, as separate panels look fantastic, but put together as part of a story are boring, is where La Tarantula, you know, where he like, it seems like he's attacking that family. And then he jumps out of the window and he's like, there is no sanctuary. Juan Hidalgo, call the others. Follow me. Like, he's leaping. He's bounding. He's flipping off the roof of a car. It should be exciting, but visually it's not. Because for the most part, he takes up the same amount of space in each of the panels that he is in. And he's kind of placed in the same spot. And this is where, when comic book people talk about storytelling, visual storytelling, this is where it's important, where there's visual storytelling happening, but it's not working. There's no flow or progression from panel to panel, from the way the figure is in one panel to the other. And while this person, Buscema, is technically a good artist, we know them to be a good artist, for some reason it's just so flat when his art is here. And it's like, while this is Buscema 2.0, Mach 2, what did you call it?
2.0, I think. Yeah.
Mark II, that's what you said. Well, this is a Mark II version of him. It's like, okay, cool. Just like Iron Man, we need a Mark III.
You know,
and
go ahead.
And to be clear, I feel like me personally, I think I'm just nitpicking because it's put up against something that I really liked. I think normally I would be like, yeah, this was done really great. The artist is fantastic as usual. Sal Buscema, I love him. But I think it's just now that we're kind of holding it up against Todd McFarlane's panels and his storytelling, it's a little bit more obvious where those like small little faults are. Yeah. But Sal Buscema also has moments where his stuff does tell a story. It's not in the paneling or the layouts, but in like small things about the characters. Like we can tell before Robbie Robertson even bumps into Tombstone, we can tell that he's kind of been tortured and something is wrong and off about him, because his in the Daily Bugle office, his like top few buttons are undone on his shirt. His tie has been loosened, and you can tell that at the beginning of the day, his tie was completely tight. He had a tie clip in his shirt with a tie, and then as the day went on, he loosened it, but never adjusted the tie clip. So like the tie is now like folded onto itself, and it stays consistently like that. So it's throughout the whole thing. It's so there's like small little details like that are really good in his work, I find, where he does he finds something interesting to do with a character visually, and he keeps it and sticks with it, and it kind of tells you what's going on with that character. That's
a great point, because as much as I love McFarlane, I don't think he would be consistent enough to keep that kind of detail going from scene to scene. Yeah.
Even down to like Spider-Man's logo on his shirt, it's always consistently really good. Most artists, they will draw it like extremely well in like a splash page or something, or like an important part. But then when he's just like swinging, it's kind of just like doodled last minute onto his shirt. It's like, yeah, that kind of looks like it. There's lines going across his chest, so it's done. Yeah. But like it stays consistently like the thin legs on his chest and exactly where it's supposed to be. So although there are moments where it feels like he needs to improve with like the layout and the storytelling part of it, sometimes those small details do add and add more to what's going on with the characters.
Right. It just makes me love cartooning even more. I just love it, just these little details. It's just so I love the art form, right? What else can I say? I don't know. Julie, did you have anything else to say?
No.
Okay.
I'm just on the scene of like Robbie Robertson eating a hot dog, and he's just like, here, take the bill. Like he's not even looking at the hot dog man.
Right.
He is just so preoccupied with Tombstone.
I actually have a question. Maybe more so for Mike. I feel like you would recognize this, but Peter's spider sense.
Yes.
Does it normally? Which direction does it normally go?
Where are you looking?
The squiggle. Like, you know how it's a squiggle and it's kind of goes from thin to thick?
Yeah, I think it starts thick and goes thin as it goes out, right?
It's like opposite, I find, in this one. Where it kind of like squiggles out. Where it goes thin to thick.
Digital page 5. Yeah, I guess you're right. That's interesting. I never noticed that.
And then later on, too, when he's taking pictures in the street, and then he like runs into the gang, you see that it goes from like thin to thick. I don't know if that's a conscious thing, or if that's just like how they did it in this issue, or but
that's interesting. I never noticed that.
Yeah, and like Todd McFarlane's squiggles almost look like music notes. They're really like really thick, and then it's like one big squiggle. Where these ones, it feels more like wispy.
Right.
It's like curving in and out.
So I guess the question is see, for me, I am of the 3 issues, I'm most excited to find out what happens next in Spectacular. I want to find out what's going to happen with Robbie Robertson and with Tarantula. What about you guys? Are you excited to find out what happens? And with Captain America?
Yeah, I'm definitely curious as to what Captain America is doing there. Tarantula is a pretty interesting character. The fact that he's back and kind of like he feels like he's doing the right thing for his country. He's doing it in like a pretty shitty way, but he thinks he's doing the right thing. And on top of that, it almost feels like the U.S. government is also on his side.
Right.
Considering the fact that, you know, the family that he was after gets arrested anyways. So it's a really interesting idea. The fact that Captain America is now getting involved, and it's going to be cool to kind of see where his point of view is on this whole situation.
Right.
So yeah, I'm definitely interested to see what's going to happen next issue.
Joel, are you excited? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a little I'm more excited than I was when we were first introduced to La Tarantula. I'm curious about who Senor Tarantula was, because apparently they're two different people. But I also would like to know how this editorial photo shoot ends up, because that minuscule bikini is quite fascinating. Yeah. But also, how do I get me a trash dumpster secret hideout? No. It's like a Murphy bookcase, but like a dumpster. You know what I mean? Like it's like a secret door, but it's a dumpster. I'm into it. I'm gonna send this to Becca and be like, look at how they get in the hideaway.
Well, right now, tiny homes are kind of trending, but maybe the next thing will be dumpster homes, right? Who knows?
Isn't a tiny home just a dumpster?
Actually, you're right.
It's like it's a shipping container.
Shipping container. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
So maybe this is next.
Yeah.
Cover it with junk, with garbage. Anyway. So yeah, I guess that wraps up another episode of Here Comes the Spider Cast. You can join us every week as we review every single 80s Spidey comic ever made in the 80s. I want to thank Josh for co-hosting and G.I. Jolie for also co-hosting.
I'm just here for laughs.
Yeah, you've been guesting so long, you're co-host too. Bex Luthor is also co-host, but she couldn't be with us this week, but hopefully she'll be with us next week. And Josh, you can take it from here.
Yeah, we want to thank you guys for listening to the podcast. It really helps when you leave us reviews, either on Apple Podcast or on Twitter or Facebook or on our website at the Comic Book Syndicate. Please let us know what you guys think about the issues that we're talking about and the podcast itself. We want to keep that comics conversation going.
That's right. So until next Monday, see you later.